Hi everyone. Today's session is going to be focusing on parenting styles in context to the present generation, aptly called IGen. This relates to the individuals who grew up with social media from the forms of Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter. The individuals that grew up with this as the norm, who had no formal knowledge of life before the internet, before social media platforms, and basically grew up with this as the way to connect. It's very important to realize that as parents, we are raising children who are vastly different from us in terms of the economic climes they face, in terms of the socio background that they come from, in terms of their environment and the world as they know it. Some of the characteristics of the IGen are as follows. They experience poor mental and emotional health due to social media. This is mainly because the online content that they are exposed to creates unrealistic expectations of success, as well as happiness, body image, and so much more. Because they've grown up facing all of these high expectations, they are not able to ever hope to achieve. They feel a sense of failure, and they're likely to be more depressed and anxious because they cannot attain these standards. Additionally, there's more opportunity for people to be left out because people are more engaged in connecting virtually as opposed to in person, and as opposed to emotional connections and in-person discussions. There is greater space for children or teens to feel left out. This is scientifically known to produce effects that are similar to physical pain. So this leads to greater levels of anxiety and greater levels of depression. Also, our kids today face a myriad of issues and titans that we ourselves did not grow up with. For example, body dysmorphia, cyberbullying, revenge porn, to name a few. So our students, our kids, our young leaders feel disconnected. They're more likely to face mental health challenges in the form of anxiety and depression, and they have overall poor emotional health due to these platforms. Anywhere between 2 or more hours on social media platforms is deemed to be detrimental to their health, especially because they're in a formative stage of development. And so they're likely to establish these very high unrealistic expectations as their frame for happiness or for success, and will inevitably fail to reach them, and so feel that they have somehow failed or are somehow less. The second thing is our IGens grow more slowly. Our IGens choose to interact, to try new things, to explore the world at a slower pace. This is because essentially our IGens have been overparented and they become timid about exploration. They're afraid to make mistakes because there's so much hinging on what is deemed to be perfect, what is deemed to be the idea of success. So they're more likely to shy away and become risk averse, which kills their creativity and the need to explore, which in essence kills their ability to grow, because it's from making mistakes that we become who we are and meant to be. Also, there's income inequality that is created by changing economic trends, COVID-19 as a pandemic, global financial distress, and because of all of these things, the IGen or the iGeneration feels like the system is rigged against them. And as such, they feel despondent and they feel like they're inheriting a world in ruins. And as such, they are less likely to feel motivated to change the course of events or have a sense of control over their lives. The next things that IGens exhibit as traits is greater empathy. This is something that is a more commendable trait. IGens are more likely to be inclusive, to welcome diversity, and to incorporate different types of people from a myriad stream of backgrounds, ethnicities, and circumstances. That is commendable, and it is something that leads to greater cross-collaboration as well as creativity. However, this is also the generation that is said to be fragile because they are likely to ask for safe spaces, they're likely to ask for trigger warnings to be in place, and as such, they are taunted as being fragile. This has two effects. In the first instance, it creates greater empathy, diversity, coexistence, but it also shuts down any platforms that can become open dialogue spaces to face the hard issues and the difficult topics that must be broached. For example, suicide. So because the IGens will ask for trigger warnings and safe spaces and will reject all forms of derisive comments as well as derogatory terms, it then creates a sense of political correctness that shields them from having the tough discussions that are required to resolve conflict and also to grow. What is the overall takeaway for us as parents, as educators, as facilitators, as well as mentors in the IGen space? There has to be more nuanced parenting. Essentially, it means that as parents, we need to be present for our children, but we additionally need to also build their self-confidence so that they are self-dependent, that they build the confidence to explore, and that they also become individuals who can survive and strive on their own. Also, if you have young teenagers, if you have individuals, toddlers growing up, it's great to limit their screen time. For adults, as and when you are on social media or on your phone, there's a sense of responsibility as well as independence. Whereas with teenagers, they need the guidance to have set times to be online and set times to be off. It would also be great as parents if you could familiarize yourself with the platforms that your children regularly frequent and also get a sense of what they're being exposed to. You cannot fight that which you don't know. So name the titans that you are facing in order for you to protect your children from them. Also, teach and encourage empathy, because that is an amazing tool and it is something that we value and we want to nurture on our kids. But your home must also become a safe space where you can create platforms for open and honest communication, especially about the difficult issues. So if your children want to discuss issues around suicide, around gender inequality, around sex, you have to become the first port of call, because if you are not, your children will never feel safe enough to discuss these issues and get a sense of their identity and where they stand based on these. The last thing to discuss is the reiteration of marketing. Marketing, social media, the world as we know it, is built with the seller in mind, not necessarily the buyer. So the expectations that our children will be exposed to, the idea that you have to be a billionaire in order to be happy, the idea that you have to constantly be happy and to smile, the idea that you have to work long hours and have side hustles, and all of these other expectations need to be altered by us, their caregivers, their parents, their mentors. We need to be able to help them gain a realistic expectation of what life is like, as well as to carve out what they themselves choose to consider as success, what they themselves choose to consider as milestones that they're happy with. Because if we don't, the world will do it for them. And the image that the world will portray will inevitably trap our kids, because they'll never, ever be able to reach this superficial level of perfection that does not in fact exist. Below, I've listed the resources as well as the articles from which this information was cited, and I hope that you read through it with the aim of better understanding the children that we're raising as our future leaders, and trying to figure out how each and every person can stand where they are and support them to become the best versions of themselves. They are a rare breed and a rather different kettle of fish, but within them lies the potential for our tomorrow and our future. So we can only nurture it and hope to bring it to fruition. Thank you so much. This has been a presentation by Nicole Zulu from Shasha Network.